The Middle Ages officially began in 476. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire. That fall was not a single event, but the collapse of centuries of decline, invasions, and crises. Rome's central power crumbled. And with it its economic, military, and cultural system. Europe was divided into smaller kingdoms, led by Germanic peoples who spoke distinct languages. The Visigoths in Hispania, the Trigoths in Italy, the Franks in Gaul, and the Anglo-Saxons in Britain. These new kingdoms adopted many Roman customs. But the old order would never return. Roman cities became depopulated, trade ground to a halt, and education collapsed. Europe entered what many would call the Dark Ages. Although that view is disputed today. The countryside became the center of life and the economy. In a world without safe roads or markets, farming to survive was the only option. Security was a luxury, and castles began to appear as refuge from danger. The Catholic Church was the only institution that maintained a certain continuity after the fall of Rome. The Pope in Rome became a figure of both spiritual and political power. Monasteries were like beacons of knowledge in a sea of ignorance. Texts: Greek, Latin, and religious. Many knew how to read, write, and heal, while the majority lived in total illiteracy. Religion was present in everything, from education to justice and medicine. During these centuries, a new form of social organization was imposed: feudalism. Kings granted noble lands in exchange for loyalty and troops to defend the kingdom. Nobles, in turn, granted lands and knights who protected the serfs. Peasants worked the fields in exchange for protection. But they could not leave the land. It was a hierarchical and rigid society, where almost everyone was born and died in the same class. Castle dominated the landscape, surrounded by villages, fields, and forests. Wood, with thatched roofs and no chimneys. Winters were harsh and food was scarce. Their lives were short and difficult. Meanwhile, in the 6th century, a new religion emerged to the south: Islam. From Arabia, Muslims rapidly spread their faith and founded an empire that reached as far away as Spain. In 711, they crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula. There, they created Landalus, a society advanced in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and art. For centuries, Christians, Muslims, and Jews coexisted, sometimes in peace, sometimes at war. In the north, Europe faced a different terror: the Vikings. From Scandinavia, these warriors plundered monasteries, cities, and coastal towns for centuries. However, over time, many settled, traded, and converted to Christianity. In the center of the continent, Charlemagne built the largest empire since Rome. He was crowned emperor by the Pope in 800, giving rise to the Carolingian Empire. This empire spanned much of Western Europe and promoted education and order. After the death of Charlemagne, his heirs divided the empire, and fragmentation returned. Between the 11th and 13th centuries, the Crusades marked the relationship between Christians and Muslims. Thousands of knights traveled to the Holy Land, driven by faith, honor, and ambition. The first Crusades were temporary victories, but subsequent ones ended in defeat and massacres. There were also internal crusades, such as the one that exterminated the Cathars in southern France. The Crusades, however, opened trade and cultural routes unknown to Europe. From the Islamic world came paper, the compass, gunpowder, and forgotten scientific texts. Meanwhile, cities grew. Guilds, fairs, and a new social class, the bourgeoisie, emerged. The trades were organized. Money circulated again, and universities opened their doors. Bologna, Paris, Oxford, and Salamanca trained generations of clerics, jurists, and doctors. Medieval literature flourished, from epic poems to religious and philosophical works. The Church also strengthened its control through the Inquisition and censorship. In the 14th century, Europe experienced one of its darkest periods. A little ice age caused years of poor harvests, famine, and disease. In 1347, a Genoese ship brought the Black Death from Asia. Within a few years, the pandemic killed more than 25 million people. Streets were littered with corpses, cities were empty, and entire families disappeared. Fear gripped Europe, and with it came profound changes. The feudal system began to falter. There were fewer workers, and the peasants demanded more. The authority of the Church also weakened, especially with the Great Western Schism. In this context of crisis, new ways of thinking and new questions emerged. Humanists like Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio began to look back to the classical world. They studied philosophy, anatomy, art, and astronomy from a more rational perspective. Invention of the printing press in 1440 allowed these ideas to be disseminated. On a massive scale, books ceased to be an exclusive luxury of monasteries and nobles. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Empire. The last vestige of Rome disappeared. And in 1492, Christopher Columbus arrived in America and changed history forever. With those two events, the Middle Ages gave way to the Renaissance and the modern age. A millennium of history, wars, ideas, and transformations. It was coming to an end, but without the Middle Ages, Europe would not have been what it is today. If you like the Middle Ages, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one.